Welcome to the Deep Thought Podcast, where we take listener-provided source material and kind of distill it down to the most fascinating and useful information.
Right.
And today we're going to be exploring the world of critical thinking.
Okay.
And we're going to be using the YouTube audiobook, Critical Thinking Mastery, Transform Your Mindset for Ultimate Personal Growth, as the basis for our deep thought.
Sounds good.
So hopefully by the end of this, we'll all be better critical thinkers.
Yeah.
And we could use this in our everyday lives.
Absolutely. I think it's so important to be able to just navigate the world with all the information that's coming at us and to be able to think clearly and make good decisions.
Yeah. And it's interesting that this audiobook kicks off with kind of a powerful analogy.
Yeah.
It compares those who kind of effortlessly navigate life's challenges, to those who are constantly struggling.
Right.
And it suggests that critical thinking is kind of the key difference maker between those two.
I think that's a really interesting point, and I think it's something that a lot of people maybe don't realize. Like, they think, oh, those people are just naturally good at things.
Yeah.
But maybe it's that they have stronger critical thinking skills.
Yeah, so if critical thinking is kind of the secret weapon here, how do we get our hands on it?
Well, that's where this audiobook gets really exciting, because it immediately busts the myth
Okay.
that critical thinking is some innate talent, reserved for a lucky few.
Right.
It presents it as a skill, like a mental muscle that you can develop and strengthen with practice.
Okay. So no more feeling intimidated by those seemingly effortless individuals. We can all kind of level up our critical thinking game.
Yeah, for sure.
But what does that actually look like in practice?
Right.
What are we actually doing when we're thinking critically?
So the audiobook uses this really cool concept.
Okay.
Think of your mind as a vast, unexplored landscape.
Oh, wow.
Filled with hidden treasures and treacherous pitfalls. And it emphasizes that self-awareness is your compass and map for navigating this terrain.
So before we even start thinking critically, we need to understand our own minds first.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so what are we looking for on this mental map then?
Yeah.
What are we trying to figure out about ourselves?
So self-awareness involves recognizing your thought patterns, understanding your default reactions, and becoming aware of your biases.
Okay.
Those sneaky mental shortcuts that can sometimes lead us astray.
Okay, let's talk about those biases then.
Yeah.
I've heard the term,
Yeah.
but can you kind of break it down in a way that makes sense for, say, someone trying to make a big decision?
Sure. So imagine you're scrolling through online reviews for a new phone. One scathing review detailing a terrible experience. Even though hundreds of other reviews are glowing, that single negative review just sticks in your mind and makes you hesitant to purchase the phone.
It does, yeah.
That's the availability heuristic in action.
So it's not just about the logic of it,
Right.
but how easily certain information comes to mind.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Are there other biases we should be aware of?
Absolutely. Another really common one is confirmation bias, which is our tendency to favor information that confirms our existing beliefs.
Right.
So let's say you're passionate about a particular political candidate.
Oh, okay.
You might find yourself seeking out news sources that align with your views while unconsciously avoiding or dismissing information that challenges your stance.
Oh, so it's almost like we build these echo chambers.
Exactly.
Mental echo chambers.
Where our beliefs just kind of bounce around without ever being truly tested.
Right.
So how do we break free from those echo chambers and start thinking more critically?
So the audiobook suggests two really powerful practices.
Okay.
Mindfulness and reflective journaling.
Okay.
Mindfulness is like hitting the pause button on your autopilot thoughts.
Right. And simply observing them without judgment.
Okay.
It's like watching clouds drift by, noticing them without getting caught up in them.
So instead of getting swept away in a wave of anxiety, we can kind of notice it, label it, understand it without letting it control us.
Exactly.
Okay. And then how does journaling kind of play into this?
Journaling provides a space to reflect on those observations.
Okay.
By writing down your thoughts and feelings, you might notice recurring patterns, emotional triggers, or habitual ways of thinking that you weren't aware of before.
So it's like becoming a detective of your own mind.
Exactly.
Uncovering those hidden clues that kind of reveal how your thoughts and emotions are influencing your actions. Okay, so once we've done some of that inner work, how do we actually apply critical thinking to the challenges and the decisions that we face in our everyday lives?
Well, the audiobook compares challenging problems to tangled knots. And just like with a knot, the first step to untangling it is understanding its structure.
Right.
It encourages us to define the problem clearly,
Okay.
often breaking down a seemingly complex issue into smaller,
Right.
more manageable parts.
So instead of getting overwhelmed by the whole knot,
Exactly.
we can focus on loosening one strand at a time.
Yes.
And once we've kind of defined the problem, what's the next step?
Think like a detective gathering clues.
Okay.
It's time to gather information from diverse sources, considering different perspectives, and even consulting experts if needed.
Okay.
This helps you gain a comprehensive understanding of the problem's nuances.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
The more information we have, the better equipped we are to untangle that knot.
for sure.
But with so much information out there, how do we know what to trust?
Yeah,
How do we analyze information effectively?
that is where critical thinking really shines.
Okay.
The audiobook uses the analogy of a detective unraveling a tangled web of claims and evidence to describe the process of analyzing information.
Okay.
And like a good detective, we need to start by breaking down their argument.
So it's not just about accepting information at face value,
No.
but like dissecting it to see if it holds up under scrutiny.
Exactly. It's about identifying the claims being made, the premises or reasons offered to support those claims, and the conclusion the argument is trying to lead you toward. Think of it like building a house. You want to make sure the foundation is solid before you start adding walls and a roof.
So we're checking the blueprints, making sure the logic is sound and the evidence is strong enough to support the claims.
Right.
But how do we know if the evidence is actually reliable?
That's where critical thinking becomes even more crucial. We need to scrutinize the source of the information. Is it credible? Is it biased? Does it have a vested interest in promoting a particular viewpoint?
So it's not just about what's being said, but like who's saying it and why. And speaking of biases, the audiobook mentions those sneaky logical fallacies that can trip us up.
Ah, yes, logical fallacies. They're like potholes on the road of reasoning. You might be cruising along thinking everything's fine, and suddenly you hit a bump that throws your whole argument off track.
I've definitely fallen victim to a few potholes in my time. Can you give us an example of a common fallacy to watch out for?
Sure, imagine you're having a debate about climate change, and someone argues that we shouldn't worry because the Earth has always experienced natural temperature fluctuations. That's an example of the appeal to nature fallacy, assuming that something is good or acceptable simply because it's natural.
So just because something has happened naturally in the past doesn't mean it's not a problem now. It's like saying, well, forest fires have always happened, so we shouldn't worry about preventing them.
Exactly. And another common fallacy is the slippery slope argument. Let's say someone suggests that if we allow same-sex marriage, it will inevitably lead to people marrying their pets. This fallacy exaggerates the potential consequences of a decision without providing any real evidence.
It's like saying if we let kids have dessert before dinner, they'll never eat their vegetables again. It's a fear tactic that often distracts from the real issue.
Precisely. And as you become more adept at spotting these fallacies, you'll be less likely to be swayed by weak arguments or misleading information. But critical thinking isn't just about tearing down bad arguments. It's also about building strong ones and making sound decisions.
And speaking of decisions, the audiobook uses this powerful image of standing at a crossroads facing multiple paths with the landscape ahead shrouded in uncertainty. How can we use critical thinking to navigate those crossroads and make choices we feel confident about?
Well, just like with problem solving, the first step is clarity. We need to clearly define the decision we're facing. What are our goals? What are the potential outcomes? And what criteria are most important to us?
So it's like setting our GPS before we start driving. We need to know where we're going and what route we want to take before we can start navigating.
Exactly. And once we have that clarity, we can start gathering information and exploring our options. This is where critical thinking helps us weigh the pros and cons, assess potential risks and rewards, and consider the long-term consequences of each choice.
So instead of just reacting impulsively, we're taking a step back, analyzing the situation, and making a more informed and deliberate choice. But what about those situations where we're just paralyzed by indecision? What if we have too many options or not enough information to feel confident?
That's where techniques like scenario planning can be incredibly helpful. It involves imagining different possible futures and considering how our decision might play out in each scenario. It's like running a mental simulation to see how different choices might lead to different outcomes.
So instead of just hoping for the best, we're anticipating potential challenges and thinking about how we might respond. That sounds like a great way to reduce anxiety and feel more prepared, even when facing uncertainty.
Exactly. And remember, decision-making isn't always a solo endeavor. Sometimes we need to bounce ideas off. Others gather different perspectives and even seek advice from trusted mentors or experts.
It's like having a team of advisors helping us weigh the options, challenge our assumptions, and make sure we're not missing any crucial information. But how do we know who to trust? How can we discern between valuable advice and opinions that might not be helpful?
That's a great question, and it circles back to one of the key themes of this audiobook, the importance of engaging with diverse perspectives.
Ah, so it's not just about seeking advice from people we agree with, but actively seeking out viewpoints that challenge our own assumptions.
Precisely. It's about stepping outside of our comfort zones and recognizing that we don't have all the answers. When we open ourselves up to different ways of thinking, we expand our understanding, refine our own perspectives, and often arrive at more nuanced and well-reasoned decisions.
So it's like adding more colors to our mental palette, creating a richer and more vibrant picture of the world. But I can imagine it can be difficult to engage with perspectives that we strongly disagree with. How can we do that constructively without feeling threatened or defensive?
That's where techniques like steel manning come in. It's the opposite of straw manning, where you attack a weak or exaggerated version of someone's argument.
Oh, I've definitely seen that happen in online debates. People twist their opponent's words to make them easier to knock down.
Exactly. But with steel manning, you do the opposite. You try to present the strongest possible version of their argument, even if you ultimately disagree with it.
It's like giving the opposing viewpoint the benefit of the doubt, trying to understand its logic and merits before formulating a response.
Precisely. And by doing so, you might even discover common ground or realize that your own position could be refined or strengthened.
It's like having a respectful sparring partner who helps you sharpen your own skills and arguments. But even with the best critical thinking skills, we're bound to face challenges and setbacks in life. How can we build that inner resilience to weather those storms and bounce back stronger?
The audiobook compares mental resilience to a mighty oak tree weathering a storm. It's about bending without breaking, adapting to change, and learning from adversity. And it emphasizes that emotional intelligence plays a crucial role in building resilience.
So it's not just about being tough or stoic, but about being in tune with our emotions, understanding how they impact our thoughts and actions, and developing healthy coping mechanisms.
Exactly. And mindfulness, once again, proves to be an invaluable tool for cultivating emotional intelligence. By practicing mindfulness, we can become more aware of our emotional states, learn to regulate our responses, and cultivate a sense of calm amidst the chaos.
It's like having an inner anchor that keeps us grounded when the storms of life inevitably roll in.
Precisely. And another key ingredient in the mental resilience recipe is cultivating a growth mindset. This means believing that our abilities and intelligence are not fixed, but can be developed through effort learning and persistence.
So instead of seeing challenges as threats, we see them as opportunities to learn and grow.
Exactly. And this mindset shift can be incredibly empowering. It helps us embrace failure as a natural part of the learning process and use it as fuel to improve and achieve our goals.
It's about having that I can do this attitude, that belief in our own ability to adapt, overcome obstacles, and ultimately become the best version of ourselves.
Well, it sounds like we've explored a lot of ground in this deep thought on critical thinking.
Well,
Any final words of wisdom before we wrap things up?
it feels like we've been handed like a mental toolkit,
Yeah,
equipped with all these incredible techniques for sharpening our thinking and navigating the complexities of life.
right. But if you had to kind of distill it down to a few key takeaways,
Yeah.
what would you say are the most important things that listeners should remember? I think it goes back to the foundation of this entire deep thought self-awareness.
Okay.
If we don't understand our own mental landscape, our biases, our default reactions, we're essentially trying to navigate a maze in the dark.
Right. So it's not just about learning these techniques,
Mm-hmm.
but about applying them to our own unique thought patterns and tendencies.
Yeah, exactly. It's about becoming the architect of your own mind,
Oh, wow. I like that.
understanding how it works, and then using these tools to build stronger, more resilient thought structures.
Yeah, it's like we're not just passively inheriting our thought patterns,
Hmm.
but actively shaping them, becoming more conscious and intentional in how we think and make decisions.
Exactly.
And that intentionality extends to everything we've discussed today, from analyzing information and spotting logical fallacies
Mm-hmm.
to engaging with diverse perspectives and making sound decisions.
Right.
It's about approaching every challenge, every decision, every piece of information with a critical eye, a curious mind, and a willingness to question our assumptions.
and to be open to being wrong, to changing our minds when presented with new evidence or compelling arguments.
Right, that's a humbling thought,
Yeah,
but also incredibly liberating.
it is.
It means we're not stuck in rigid ways of thinking,
Right.
but constantly evolving and growing.
Precisely. And that's what makes critical thinking such a powerful and rewarding journey. It's not about arriving at a final destination,
Right?
but about embracing the process of continuous learning and refinement.
Well said.
Uh,
So to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this deep thought on critical thinking. We hope you found it insightful and empowering.
If you did, please like and subscribe to the Deep Thought podcast.
Yes.
And be sure to check out our other episodes. We have some fascinating deep thoughts lined up, just waiting to be explored.
And for those who want to delve even deeper into this topic, we've included some helpful links in the show notes below.
Until next time, keep those critical thinking muscles flexed and never stop questioning, exploring, and expanding your understanding of the world.
We'll see you on the next Deep Thought.